Okay, now we're here.
No problem.
Um, okay, so why no tutorial? That's the toughest question I have.
I know. Honestly, it's been one of the biggest kind of nightmares within developing the game for us. And this is across a lot of different things, but basically, the big problem we have is Hell Let Loose is a game where you basically are exposed to every single mechanic of the game within the first 1 second of you getting into the game,
Yeah,
more or less. In so much as when you play a game, you get in and you can more or less choose from all 14 roles. I mean, obviously the commander has a level gate on it and a couple of other things, but generally speaking, the problem with developing Hell Let Loose is everyone is exposed to every mechanic almost immediately. Besides some that you might unlock, at a later loadout and a
yeah.
later role level. So to be frank about it. I would say our biggest weakness with Hell Let Loose is that we do a poor job of introducing players into the game, and of showing them really how to play. To be honest, and a combination of it is exactly as we've spoken about with regards to your fantastic videos that help people understand the game. The game changes every update quite significantly.
Yeah.
And so we've found, yeah, we can definitely take the time out and make a tutorial of a certain kind. I think, like, I mean, there's also a conversation about like what type of tutorial we need. Um, but so I suppose my first point would be that up until really recently, we haven't really felt like the game has had stuff kind of solidified enough to then say, all right, everyone, this is how, this is the exact game.
Yeah.
That said, though, I don't want to give you a cop out answer. I think that we're going to be um, looking at introducing one, even if it's just a very, very basic, like press, AWS and
Yeah.
D to move around, left control to crouch. I mean, that sort of thing. We know that we need to do this, and I think it's been our biggest failing on the game. Everyone will know that we've worked quite a lot to get a whole bunch of overhauls in, all this other stuff, and to be honest, it's something next time that we would prepare for well in advance. But it does also feel like a very almost unique Hell Let Loose related problem. I mean, we've
Yeah.
seen other games, that do sort of training ranges, and they very, very quickly become bugged or outdated, or stuff breaks in them, or we suspect that if we're going to do a tutorial, depending on how complex the tutorial is, it may be quite a significant amount, not only a significant amount of work, but also need maybe the one developer or two developers full time to kind of keep it up to speed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So I know we've got the field manual. That alone has been a bit of a nightmare to kind of keep up to speed. But yeah, we I'll be the first to admit we do a really poor job of introducing players to the game. Obviously, we've got the field manual. We've got, we're trying to flesh the game out so that stuff doesn't feel so completely like inexplicable. But that's my giant long-winded answer for you.
Okay.
So it's something that we need to do. Um, and I should say, like whether it be Hell Let Loose 2 or like, in a couple of months' time or whenever we do get a tutorial, and I think we've got a pretty set idea now of what constitutes a Hell Let Loose game.
Yeah.
And I think also we need to take some time, step back. I have to admit we've really been running full speed on developing Hell Let Loose. Like all the amount of work we've kind of tried to output in these couple of years of early access, has meant that we've been running full speed. We really need to step back, look at actually those questions that new players would ask, like, how on earth do I do this? And then, make the right type of tutorial, I think, as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an apology, I guess, to the community as well. We know we need one. It is a conundrum, and perhaps we should have prioritized this better. But it's something that we're definitely keen to do.
Okay. Do you want to talk to me about like the map design process? Because I think like one of the things that I like the most about this game is the maps and the feel of the maps, because they feel very realistic in a way. Like they look like real life locations. They make sense. in that way, and they're not necessarily like gamified, if you will. If there's like anything specific about this map that you want to show, or that
Yeah, yeah,
that you want to talk
definitely.
about, why Stalingrad, why Kursk for the Eastern Front is the two main starter maps, and stuff like that.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think that Stalingrad and Kursk, when you think about the Eastern Front, you really do, I think that's a place people's mind goes to first. Often, I mean, we've obviously got Kharkov, Moscow outskirts, lots of like amazing, huge battles, and obviously with Kursk, we've chosen a very, very tiny portion of land where like the broader Battle of Kursk spanned, I think, about 150 kilometers, maybe even more. With Stalingrad, I mean, we really felt like that had a very iconic location in our minds, both with regard to the media that we've consumed, and then also the battle itself is, arguably one of the largest battles in human history. I think it is the largest battle in human history. So, um, kind of, I guess, the historical importance of it, the name recognition, the fact that most people have some inkling of what Stalingrad is, of what Kursk
Yeah,
is. And then on top of that as well, that they were really dramatically different to what we've already got in the game was a massive appeal to us. Um, we've done some semi-industrial environments before with, I think probably Karantan being the
yeah,
most industrial so far. And so with Stalingrad, we really wanted to do a different type of gameplay flow, multi-story buildings like the one that you see in front of us here. Lots of cool kind of different proportion changes with Stalingrad, obviously. Um, it's all about much larger city blocks. And obviously, here we are, we're in Grudinin Steam Mill, which was the mill that I don't think the Germans ever took it, but it sits behind Pavlov's house,
yeah,
which is just the building to our southwest there to the 228. One of the yellow apartment buildings that sort of famously ended up becoming marked as a
yeah.
fortress on German tactical maps. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever play a game called Forgotten Hope, which was a mod for Battlefield 9042 and Battlefield 2?
Yes, I did. Yeah, yeah, I did.
Okay.
Only until recently did I have it on my system. I just did a fresh install not too long ago.
All
But
right.
yeah, no, big respect to Guderian and the guys who work on Forgotten Hope.
Yeah, because when I started playing Helladus, like Helladus for me is the future, is what Forgotten Hope, like it reminds me a lot of Forgotten Hope. I used to play Forgotten Hope a lot back in the day. Like I used to play Battlefield 9042 competitively, and yeah, Forgotten Hope was always like the hardcore Battlefield 9042 for me, and
Mm,
Helladus has such a similar vibe to it in
mm.
the best way like possible. Because it does have that hardcore feel to it, but it's not, as I always say, it's enjoyable realism and not just a striving for a simulation. You know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, yeah, I think Forgotten Hope. I think Forgotten Hope had a quite a big influence on us. I mean, I think obviously I've said it a lot of times, but Project Reality was another big one. For Forgotten Hope, I think the biggest influence Forgotten Hope had on us was um, the breadth of the experiences and the quality of their art team,
Yes.
and of the design. I mean, like their artwork is so cohesive and really immersive, and went a huge way in making you feel like you're a part of those battles.
Yeah. Any
I
other
think that
like
was something.
any
Sorry.
other major inspirations for Hell Let Loose?
I think Red Orchestra, with regard to the idea of two teams kind of pressing against one another, with leaders trying to find that small chink in the armor that they were able to get through.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big aspect for us with Hell Let Loose, and then obviously Project Reality. The whole spawning meta is what we've taken obviously from
Yeah.
Project Reality, and the implementation obviously of the ability to build fortifications and things like that have been massive inspirations to us. And then I think finally, Company of Heroes,
Yeah.
another big one. Obviously, everyone can kind of discuss as to how much we should have taken, or if we haven't taken enough, or if we've taken too much.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But it's definitely been a big influence on us, and I think will has already started to and will continue to kind of shape the future of the game, really. Um, with regard to, now we'll be expanding out the commander abilities and starting to diversify them across the different forces.
Okay.
Um, you know, no one can look at the Katyusha strike that the Soviet forces have and not think that something like a Nebelwerfer strike would be cool for the Germans,
Yeah.
or a Stuka, a dive bombing Stuka.
Yeah.
These are all things, we really want to do. For us, though, it's been quite tough because ideally we would start there. But just by virtue of how many people we have on the team, it's been a slow expansion process. And so, for instance, we never really wanted, the Germans to have necessarily a bombing run, or the Allies. We might give them a naval barrage ability, depending on obviously the map.
Yeah.
Um, but this is kind of the way that the game will start to develop. Is you'll start to see different vehicles, greater emphasis on the way that you use your resources. You'll start to see some mechanics becoming um, slightly more diversified, and so it'll be less of just a straight matchup between forces. I.e., they've used their bombing run, you use your bombing run. They've used their strafing run, you use your strafing run. It'd
That's
be
very
lovely to do like a
interesting.
rocket. Yeah, it would be lovely to do like a rocket attack, or we might even do something where one force doesn't have the ability to do a supply drop, but they are able to get their abilities their supplies in a different way. And obviously, though, as you know, we're fortunate that we have a very passionate community. Some people may think the changes are good. Some people will hate them. It's always, always a
Yeah, it's
massive
always,
balance, as
yeah.
you can imagine.
There's a surprising lack of barbed wire in this map. With the implementation of barbed wire, like, are we gonna see destructible environmental barbed wire being added? Because I think the way the changes to barbed wire have affected maps like Utah Beach, where there's just like barbed wire all over
Mm,
the place. It's made
mm.
it, if you get Chapel, then it's good, but if you get WN4 or WN7, I think it is, it becomes such a hassle to get through all that barbed wire.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely at the moment. I mean, it's such a great example of like the development journey of Hell Let Loose, where you know every time we change anything, we see the way maps play it becomes completely different.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing, really. But yeah, it's our intention to basically offer players the ability to destroy it.
Okay.
We need to just basically do a little bit of profiling on it. Our main concern was that if we let players destroy all barbed wire at the minute, the amount of replication cost on the server um,
Oh,
could
yeah.
be extremely high. Yeah. So we've
Okay.
got the satchels, obviously, that can destroy built barbed wire.
Yeah.
And ideally, we would roll that out. Just the nature of it is we've had so much. Hell Let Loose is like a story of priorities as well, where we're trying to do about 50 million things at once. And I think what will happen now is with kind of early access symbolizing us understanding what the game is.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's arguably always fine tuning to be done on everything. We've
Yeah,
got some things wrong. We've got
stuff
some
like
things
removing
right.
airheads from the game.
No, some people love them. The problem is that this is the problem is that someone says, "Oh, we've got to get rid of airheads. They suck," and then another person is like, "They're literally the reason I play the game."
Yeah.
Well, airheads is a good example. I mean, our idea here is that we basically give you tools to use in different situations. Airheads, I mean, ideally, we would be able to allow you to do like a paradrop, right? And
Yes.
that may be on the cards in the future, where we can drop you, about 300
Yeah,
meters in
like
the air.
a more
Um,
visually appealing way to represent what the airhead is, right?
Well, the airhead's meant to kind of represent the idea that like someone's gone ahead of you and established a location,
Yeah.
and then you've kind of regrouped on the ground. So we could have a paradrop
Okay.
alongside an airhead because they do have different that they'll have different
They're
ways of
conceptually
presenting, different
different.
ways of countering. Yeah, yeah. Whereas obviously, on some maps, a paradrop where you're hanging in the air might be just kind of suicide. Like on Stalingrad, it actually might be, because there's so little visual sightline distraction above
Yeah.
sort of 100 meters. Whereas on Hurtgen, it might be fantastic because obviously you've got the trees kind of concealing falling paratroopers.
Yeah.
But the basic idea, I think, with Hell Let Loose, that we're always kind of keen to tell, I guess, the broader community as well, is that our idea here is to build out toolboxes and abilities that eventually you're kind of the skill in the play at a very high level is in choosing the right tool for the job right at that point. So, for instance, an airhead might be very useful on a map where you can only cross at one or two locations, cross a river in the middle at one or two locations.
Yeah.
And so, to break across the river, you need to time that airhead correctly, or you need to time a paradrop.
I
And
also
so that's
think
kind of the way we think about it.
the game right now has a problem with extremely experienced players knowing how to exploit something like an airhead at just the right time in just the right place to completely
Yeah.
destroy the enemy, while new players struggle to even understand how to build a garrison.
Yes.
I was actually playing yesterday, and we were playing. We had a really good match, and then we got Omaha,
Hmm.
and we completely steamrolled the other team, which had given up a seriously good fight on the previous match, because the offensive war mode requires you to think ahead and to build your defenses before the enemy actually gets there. Uh,
Yeah.
so they just weren't ready to fall back, and so we just like literally walked from the beach to the last point of the
Mm.
map, basically unopposed.
Mm.
Not even finding the enemy. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. Like you were talking about the tutorial earlier. Why it's so important to get the community up. I think this. I think the community is awesome at teaching new players how to play the game.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
and when you do have two sides that really understand the game going against each other, it's a wonderful thing to play. It really is,
Yeah.
because then like airheads get spotted, they get countered. There's a recon tank going around trying to spot them, and you have like all these cogs in a gigantic machine, working very well together.
Mm. No,
Uh,
I totally agree. I mean, okay, cool. Sorry.
yeah,
Um, yeah, no, I think that's sort of the story of Hell Let Loose with regard to the way that players basically advance through
yeah,
their understanding of the game. I suppose something that I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see is our telemetry does show us that there's a quite an even matchup between the two sides.
that's
And so the
awesome.
question that we always have is, I mean, even the publicly available kind of telemetry of sorts, which is the sort of the Steam achievements, show that the allies have only a very slightly like it's a decimal place win percentage over the Germans at the minute. But it is definitely always a question for us to figure out if something should be nerfed, if something should be buffed, or something like that, according to like the usage of it in the game. For instance, like the reason you guys were able to steamroll those guys on Omaha, um, you know, maybe something that they can learn from and then counter in their next game, and they perhaps might be a little bit more careful around letting you guys roll too deep too quickly or
Yeah,
something like that. And so a large part of obviously what's difficult about Hell Let Loose is again that instead of like a single player game or even a game of like three players playing in a small team, is that people have these wildly different experiences. And so often when we get feedback, I kind of always want to know like what how does that person play the game? Are they a recon player? Are they a support role? Are they a medic?
Yeah.
What lens do they see the game through? Are they commander? And obviously, for us, it's always trying to address feedback, figure out if the feedback is really critical, or even if like we're all aiming for the end goal for what like a good game of Hell Let Loose looks like. And that's not to say that we've got it perfect. But that's kind of just the thinking that goes into it with regard to like um, how we approach changing stuff in the game, and trying to sort of make it better. So, I mean, update 10 represents, a whole bunch of new stuff coming in, tweaks and changes to stuff that we feel will improve the meta. I mean, we feel that it's greatly improved offensive mode. I don't know if you've managed to play. You'll see a couple of changes. Across the board with regard to, I mean, particularly I think offensive mode plays far better now. It's a far more focused experience and it's a far more
Because you
decisive
reduce the
experience.
points from 2 to 1, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a result, the preparation is much more. The preparation both teams can do is much more focused,
Yeah.
and it feels like a far less like long game. I mean, previously offensive mode could last for like 3 hours, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we feel that that's playing really well. We actually feel that it's maybe even playing stronger than Warfare at the moment,
Nice.
just because you really do experience both teams have a singular objective that everyone is kind of pulling towards, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Um, what is one absolutely unrealistic addition you would make to the game if you could?
Unrealistic.
Yes.
Um,
Or like, what is your wildest dream? I wish we could have this, or we'll finally
yeah,
see the day when we add like X.
it's very tough, right? Because basically, if you look at
Yeah.
our update history, almost every update has kind of added something quite major to the game that's changed sort of the way that it's played,
Yeah.
in a significant way. And that's been good because it's kept it sort of fresh, but it's also been bad because, people get used to something and then it's changed it and they may not like it and all the rest of it. So I
Yeah.
think for us, even just small stuff like new theaters, new guns. I think that when we get so the two big things that are really high priority at the moment are to basically introduce the Panzer IV for the Germans as their
Nice.
stock medium tank, and make the Panther and the Tiger special tactical call-ins as opposed to just the standard. Um, you should not be seeing a Tiger like every game.
Yeah.
It was such a rare tank. It's meant that a lot of our AT balance has been massively weighted towards heavy armor, and the same goes with the jumbos as well. So we're really excited. We've got the T-34s for the Russians, which we feel is performing really well. We've got the Panzer IV for the Germans, which is coming down the pipe. We wanted to have it in for update 10, but unfortunately, the sheer amount of kind of content for update 10 made our QA team uh, say, okay, guys, can you please just slow down here
Just
for a
stop.
moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, those poor guys. It's a lot of new stuff in update 10 already. And then just kind of more of the stock Sherman. Instead of seeing jumbos all the time, or the bigger gun versions, we'll get the stock version in for the US. And so we want to kind of shift the armor meta more towards medium tanks, with heavy tanks and interesting tanks being more of a concerted commander decision rather than just like they're always there. So I think that's going to be a big significant thing on the meta. So the second part that I think is that half tracks will really have a significant and interesting effect on the way the game is played. Um,
Have you
for
guys
those
tested
who
that
don't,
internally already?
not yet, no, not yet. That's basically kind of first priority. We've done a lot of we've gamed it out a lot. We tend to just game things out a lot and look at tactical maps, think about where we would try and take the thing. How
Yeah.
would we play it? How would we play it? What would we do with it? A lot of that goes into the cost of bringing it in. Will it be part of the vanilla lineup or not? And essentially, what we're aiming for is a game that tactically and strategically when you're a new player starting out, not much of it makes sense to you. But as you become more and more experienced, the experienced players look around, they say that's an airhead going down, and they know what that means.
Yeah.
They immediately know what that means. And we think that we'll see the same with half tracks, where these will basically allow sort of mechanized infantry to um, push deep into red territory, enemy occupied territory for people who don't know, and spawn their team in much like a garrison, but unrestricted by the normal rules that affect garrisons.
Nice.
So that's kind of something we think will really radically affect the meta
Yeah,
in
for
a
sure.
positive way, rewarding um, rewarding the placement and the daringness of the drivers. If you play conservatively with a half track, obviously you'll keep it alive longer. If you play really, if you're managing somehow to protect the half track up to a point that it can actually get on the SP, you've done something really kind of special.
Yeah.
Within the context of Hell Let Loose, it's a hard thing to do. So I think those things. I mean, we'd love to get in fire. We're keen to do a fire update, sort of Molotov cocktails, flamethrowers, that sort of thing.
Yes.
We think that could add something really interesting to the game. But yeah, I mean, other than that, radically different battlegrounds battlefields that people haven't played in yet. And by that I mean like styles of play. I think is really interesting because what we've sort of established with Hell Let Loose is kind of um, we've given you the same suite of tools map to map, and the big modifying factor is obviously the team on that map, but also um,
The map
the
itself.
map itself.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Going
exactly.
back to the map talk. When so obviously like different maps as you were saying, like Purple Heart Lane plays completely different from something like Hurtgen Forest, which plays completely different from something like Saint-Marie.
Mhm.
When you start like when you go about developing a new map, let's say Stalingrad here, do you think like, okay, we're gonna have, top right side of the map, we're gonna have this landmark location, and that's gonna make for this type of gameplay, and on this other side we're gonna do this. So like, do you conceive of that part of the gameplay when designing the maps?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I work with so the level designer who owned both Kursk and Stalingrad is Greetson, fantastic level designer. And the way that we basically start, I can take you through the process, is we'll find a location using historical maps. We'll find the actual location of the battle, obviously,
Yeah.
and then we will, because obviously the Battle of Stalingrad was a whole city. We then kind of zone in and say, well, we may not be able to do the whole battle in this one area, obviously, because Stalingrad had so many components to it that people want to see. They want to see tractor factory, grain silo, the railway station, Fallen Fighters Square, and Pavlov's house. So we thought, well,
Where's the
Pavlov's
square,
house.
by the way? The
So yeah, so January 9th Square, which I believe marks the date of the Russian Revolution, is over here. And it actually is, and it actually was the site of the Tsaritsyn Cathedral. If people Google the Tsaritsyn Cathedral or have played Battlefield 1, there's a map called Tsaritsyn. And that's the pre-communist revolution name for Stalingrad. But over here, unfortunately, the Soviets turned it into a giant uh, dirt square, more or less. There wasn't a lot happening. They built a tram through the middle of it, and then Pavlov's house and I think it's Zagornikov's house next to it were basically houses for the railway workers and the people who worked in the mill
okay.
behind it. So where we're standing right now is what's called January 9th Square. If you Google that, you can find amazing black and white photos. But this incredible cathedral used to stand in the center. The whole thing was demolished with the advent of the Soviets rising to power, and then replaced with those charming apartment buildings and the little tram station building in the middle of the square. Um, and that's sort of what happened to it. So this is January 9th Square. Fallen Fighters Square is to the southeast, quite far. And that's sort of where the main city center is. The Univamag, which is a big main department store in Stalingrad, is down there. We're keen to do a map that basically gets the key train station. It gets Fallen Fighters Square and the Univamag and a bit of the river bank all in the same map. So much like this map, but just located further to the south. And
Okay.
then to the north, we have the same, but with the grain elevator. And the Red October factory is to the north of it. So to take you through the mapping process, essentially, we'll find the location of the battle in real life, the iconic battle. We know the dimensions of the Hell Let Loose in-game map. And we basically will line it up over an area that we feels captures as much kind of visual interest or difference within the area possible. So, for instance, if we look at the map for this map, the tactical map for this map, we lined it up so that we could keep Grudinnin's Mill, which was a very famous Soviet fallback position. We spawn you at the banks of the Volga, which is obviously where the Soviets were pushed back to and had a lot of their HQ positions. We have the L-shaped house just north of Grudinnin's Mill, which was a very famous location that the Soviets resisted from. We had the brewery and a couple of other buildings just to the south. And then we also have, obviously, Pavlov's house is one of the most
Yeah.
iconic locations. And then all of the suburbs above Stalingrad, are there in real life. That's we've got pictures basically almost detail for detail. We've got the exact same elevation, the exact same buildings. We've done a lot of studies of the architecture. On the right here, you'll see kind of an old Tsaritsyn building. You can tell because of the detail on the brickwork, which the Soviets considered sort of extraneous and unnecessary. So there was some remaining sort of some Tsarist buildings, and
Yeah.
then on the left you sort of had more of the new kind of
Yeah.
Soviet apartment buildings.
Yeah, the giant Lego bricks.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's quite an interesting story of like different types of architecture. And then obviously on the right here, the destroyed Izba, the small sort of Russian suburban country houses. You find them mainly in the country now, obviously, because in the city, throughout the 20th century, they started to manufacture buildings with brick and concrete and the rest of it. But back during World War II, it was largely exactly what we see in this map up above in the suburbs, which is a massive clutter of destroyed like wooden fences, destroyed wooden houses. Yeah, it's quite amazing. The other strange thing in mapping Stalingrad was that we would look at a lot of the images of the maps, and there were really arbitrary decisions made in town planning. Like, for instance, this house here, the Soviets would just build a house without much thought of what was around it or what connected it. So, for instance, the choice to build Pavlov's house, which is a house for the workers, right next to a train line in the middle of this square, kind of offset,
Yeah.
is very unusual, but very, very typically Soviet. And so it's all this type of stuff we try and take into account when we're building a map. And then what we basically do is we'll look at all the locations and landmarks on the map, and then we'll basically have a think about the way that players might play with them, what type of cover we've got. We think a lot now about trying to create strong lines of attack. We want to give players the ability to leapfrog from point to point. We
Okay.
know people don't love it when you can't move around the map at all as an infantryman because you know you have to run 300 meters with no cover. So
Yes.
what we've done over time is we've got better and better and better, I think,
I
at trying to hit the sweet spot.
I actually think I was actually gonna do a video soon on that I've been like postponing for quite some time now. Called I was gonna call it like how to find cover where there is none, because I
Mm,
think one of the main aspects that people might not realize from maps like Foy or Purple Heart Lane is that you don't necessarily like. Yes, there's a lot of open area in Foy, but there's a huge amount of spots where you can just run, and if you crouch, you can use the slight elevation in the terrain, like the slight depressions and elevations, to hide, your whatever, like 80 centimeters or like a meter or something body height from the, when crouched from the enemy quite effectively.
Yes.
And obviously that's something like, you're new to the game, you're gonna stick to like hardcover most of the time. But as a guy that's been playing this for like a long time, I always use those avenues of attack to flank the enemy in ways that they don't really expect you to come from. And that's actually something that I really like about the map design in maps like Foy. Purple Heart Lane is a map that I don't really like. It's become like kind of a meme in my channel that I don't like Purple Heart Lane. Um,
Yeah.
it's just depressing, man. It's like the rain and the getting like drowning and yeah. Uh,
There's not a lot of cover either. There's not a lot of cover.
there's not a lot of cover.
Um,
It used to be one of my favorite maps in the game
mm,
because it's like a meat grinder and it is hard to get around and it provides that you feel like you're actually there and it's just a pain in the ass, like it's
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
bad experience all around in terms of if you think about being a soldier there all wet and just having to traverse this awful terrain.
Mm.
It's very immersive, but once you've played it like a few dozen times or 100 times or something, it becomes like, oh my god.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, we've learned a lot since we did Purple Heart Lane, even where we're going to go back to the Western Front maps while we sort of simultaneously work on the Eastern Front and other things, and really look at kind of trying to fix up some of the worst aspects of them. We know we did a pass on Foy town.
Yeah,
The outskirts position was way too close up to the center, so we tried to move that down.
yeah,
We're looking at Omaha at the moment, actually. We know that a lot of the strong points on Omaha are offset too much. So a lot of what we try and consider now, where we can, is trying to keep those strong points as centralized as possible, and then also trying to make sure that that we're offering you enough cover that may not have necessarily been there on the day, so that at least you can make kind of strategic decisions. And we generally tend to find about 100 meters, 50 meters is about the maximum you'd want to go with no cover. Um, we don't want to make it so punishing or so vehicle dominant that the infantry just is unviable. I mean, I was just going to show you here. This is a really good example. So
yeah,
the strong point, obviously, down there, the train station. This was obviously a huge railway that basically went down the middle of Stalingrad from north of the Volga to the south. And this white wall that you see at the bottom here
yeah.
wasn't there in real life.
All right.
Um, it wasn't there. There's those sort of dirt embankments that you see just beyond them.
Yeah,
They weren't there either. And so, what if we were to be completely true to real life? You would have. I mean, can you even imagine like
yeah.
a
Running from
200
here,
meter run?
yeah, that's like what? Yeah, 250 meters over to the
Yeah,
other side,
yeah,
basically,
exactly,
with pretty much
exactly. And
nothing.
exactly. And so by just giving even this crucial wall here, you at least offer a good garrison, good OP location that
Yeah,
lets you then leapfrog up, and also you're down on the ground where most of the defenders are firing from the ground. So you can actually use this here as cover because you don't have an elevated defender in front of you.
yeah.
Um, and so we give a lot of thought to this type of thing. We play it as much as we can. And
Kursk,
then for the
Kursk seems
oh, sorry.
like it's gonna be one of those maps with a lot of open space. When I only played it once on the PT, unfortunately, but I do remember
Mm,
it being like very wide open spaces.
Yeah, Kursk is an interesting one though, because I think people assume it's going to be kind of Purple Heart Lane 2.0, when most players have received it almost like Foy, Eastern Front Foy, because we do offer the in the idea that there are open spaces, but you can take trenches to make sure that you kind of stay in terms of infantry combat.
Okay.
So I'm keen to see what you think after you've played it a couple more times. But I think Kursk is one of those maps where when you learn the trench networks, you have you're a very powerful player because you know how to attack the point.
Okay.
That was our chief concern with Kursk was how hard is this going to be?
Are you gonna
But
make specific balances to maps in terms of, like, for example, will more tanks spawn naturally on Kursk than other maps, given it was a major tank battle?
this is the tough thing for us because to do map specific rules will then mean that you're changing the competitive dynamic on every single game. And not only does that become huge amount of work just for the dev team to maintain those specific things on every single map, but it also sort of weakens the competitive nature of each game. You know,
All
you're
right.
having
Yeah.
to change everything you do every single time. So what we prefer to do is because Kursk is a wide open map, we want to make it so armor is the natural way that your commander would spend his resources, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Knowing that you're facing wide open spaces, armor dominance is key. And so what we've kind of seen on Kursk is that, whereas in some of the forest maps, people aren't so excited to spawn a tiger tank in, on Kursk, it's quite a key aspect to it. So this is one of the difficulties of, like, where historical reality meets a game. And you kind of have to decide, do you only do very locked, narrow, um, uh, map specific rules, or do you try and create a competitive atmosphere map to map and then have the map be the determining factor of how the game is played, if that makes sense? We
Yeah.
feel that if we meant that it was all map specific, the quality of the game from game to game would be very difficult for us to achieve, if that
All
makes
right.
sense, because
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, all your strategies on one map that you've been learning won't work. And instead of adapting it for the map, you're having to relearn a completely new set of vehicles where only the most absolute hardcore person would probably need a website to remember. Um, Whereas we're kind of keen to keep the same tools in the toolbox and see how you use them differently per map, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It does make sense. Yeah.
And then just to quickly show you, so obviously for this point from this position of the Soviets, you're presented with all the Germans, particularly German armor, being up on the hillside, which is an
Yeah.
extremely powerful position. And so something that we thought a lot about was we brought this wall in here. Stalingrad, once it had been bombed by the Germans, before they even really moved into the city, they basically leveled the city. Um, there wasn't a lot of cover. There were some key buildings, but there wasn't tons of cover. And so basically with this, the idea is that we uh, uh, essentially offer you places to build OPs, places to build garrisons, and sort of positions from which you can, hold the strong point without just immediately being wiped out if there's a tank on the hill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. An
so a lot
argument
of
I
this,
see.
yeah.
An argument I see from a lot of, like, some of the player base is like, oh, you know what, I want the weapons to be as accurate as possible. I want, everything to be as historically accurate as possible. But then again, like a 50v50 is not accurate to basically any engagement ever, right? You're never gonna have the exact same soldier count on one side as the other one in an engagement. So the premise is flawed in its inception, I think, because if you were to actually make this map as accurate as possible, then you would have to have like a maybe like an 80v20 or something, or a
Yeah,
60v40. I'm not sure about the numbers. Like, but it most definitely would not be an evenly matched force in terms of infantry count, right? Um,
Yeah, no,
so
no, one
so
hundred
so
percent.
striving for that accuracy is just it's I mean it's a noble effort, obviously, and it makes the game cool when you recognize the locations and they are very precise and stuff like that, but it also has to be a good game.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and that's kind of fundamentally the case. Is that I mean, I understand people saying, "Hey, there are too many automatics in the game right now." We tend to agree. We're going to actually be
Yeah.
replacing a couple of the automatics on some of the roles that shouldn't really have them, with some different, more kind of interesting selections that aren't automatics. But that's 100% the case. I mean, a lot of the time, if we were to tailor, I'm talking, yeah, more about sort of map specific stuff. I mean, not only would you not want to play on the map because you just simply wouldn't have the ability to win. Um, we also make the game quite uncompetitive. We wouldn't see the kind of conversations around fixed elements of the meta that we see because obviously half of it would work on one map, half of it wouldn't work on another. So it definitely has been a decision that we made to in order to make the game feel kind of competitive, like you can kind of learn how to play, and that whenever we show a new map, people can say, "Ooh, I wonder if this would work on this map," or "I wonder if." For instance, the satchel charge is a kind of a good example. We watched in the PTE one of the games be won by an 11th hour Soviet satchel charge in the mill that ended up
Nice.
taking out 3 floors of players. Basically, I mean, it was this guy. This guy didn't. I don't think this guy knew what he had done, but he basically um,
Yeah, wiped
wiped
out
them
the
all
entire.
out.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
and
love satchel
until you
charges.
see that, yeah, until you see that, you might think satchel charges this is completely useless. Like, how on earth do you use this? Or people might say, oh, it's just for taking down vehicles,
No, no, no,
or
no.
or whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're always thinking about is trying to introduce like quite simple mechanics, in so much as a satchel charge is a timed explosive that explodes and does damage. Right? It's quite
Yeah,
simple. But that when you change the nature of the map, it might be something that isn't appropriate for one map because it's, for
yeah,
instance, on maps without like Kursk, for instance, you may only use satchel charges for trying to take down a particular tricky machine gun position, or maybe clear out a building, or maybe go for a tank. But in Stalingrad, you're able to clear some of these huge buildings quite effectively.
I actually have
Um,
the opposite anecdote. I lost a
oh
match
yeah.
in Utah Beach because I satcheled the church just as our team was overrunning the enemy, and I TK'd like 6 guys, and we lost the middle
Oh
point, and we
yeah.
never got it back.
Oh no. No,
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, but that I think that's such a good demonstration of it though, because like we could definitely say, well, satchel charges weren't present here. They only
yeah,
had Bangalores for the Americans, so no satchel charges. And then all of a sudden, the quality of the games that you have basically becomes incredibly varied.
yeah.
Um,
I
and
understand. Yeah,
instead of you learning like the game and how to use satchel charges, you're kind of having to keep a giant note of like what's actually available to you game to game. So that's kind of
that
I think I just wanted to talk about the bit of the decision making there, because I do understand that the more historical, those who are more historically focused, I can see why their complaint would be that we should match it to that more. For
yeah.
us, we feel that it keeps the game competitive to make sure that you're not having to relearn what everyone has every game.
I think. Oh man, I had a thought and completely escaped my mind just now. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the problems that Forgotten Hope had back in the day. That it did have like map specific kits and vehicles all over the place and stuff like that. That made it so it was really hard to balance the maps. I think, or at least that was my experience. Once you learned the position that you could take with the specific tank here, right here, and just dominate the entire enemy team from because the other guys did not have whatever, like a ranged AT weapon, right? Because it stuck to that historical accuracy, and that made it so yeah, you could not counter this the same way you could in other maps, and just that just broke the experience in a way.
Yeah, it's something that we've kind of seen in a couple of different games, and then we've seen like the good strengths of the current system in other games. So Red Orchestra more or less had kind of the same host of weapons per force per map,
Yeah,
which we felt did make it quite competitive, did make it feel like you weren't going to get a massively wildly varied experience every time. But I also appreciate that it might not be for everyone. People might want that absolute pure experience where, you know, for instance, so I mean, one of the problems of it obviously is that we do have a Tiger tank. The commander can spawn a Tiger tank at Stalingrad, and obviously Tiger tanks emerged later than the Battle of Stalingrad. But the way that we sort of aim to fix this is by introducing a greater variety of other cheaper earlier war vehicles, the Stug, things like that, the Panzer IV, maybe some more Panzer IIIs, Panzer IIs, in order to try and kind of balance that out. But it's definitely tough, right? It's
yeah,
extremely tough because you kind of have to then say, well, where's the cutoff if you're going to do a cutoff? Even just with the customization side of things, it's a nightmare. Like if we were to be historically accurate, I mean, people would just be wearing one uniform, and
yeah,
that would be it. It would just be the one uniform per map, which then obviously kind of negates the
yeah.
purpose of that.
Of the entire system. One thing
Yeah,
we
that's right.
didn't talk about is this game is
Hmm.
coming to PS5 and Series X.
Yeah,
What
that's
made
right. Yeah, yeah.
the it's gonna be like the only game in this quote unquote like milsim genre arriving on consoles anytime soon, I guess. What made the like? How did you take the decision of bringing the game to consoles? And are there any sacrifices or any adjustments that are going to be like console specific? Obviously, you're probably still in the work in progress there. Um, but yeah, I was really surprised by the decision, and I think it's going to be, especially for the PS5 where each controller has a microphone already. I think it's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was kind of my feeling, right? So the way I got into games like Hell Let Loose was, I was a Call of Duty player, and I played a whole ton of Project Reality after my friends sort of forcibly told me to get it. And there was nothing that said that I was a Call of Duty player more than a Project Reality player, other than the fact that I hadn't experienced it yet. And what I'm sure what you've found is, you weren't born and then started playing sort of milsim or hardcore shooters.
Oh, that
We
no,
get
that
introduced to
actually
them.
was the case.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, second birthday. Here's your copy of Armor One. Here you go. um, but yeah, players get introduced to these concepts, to these games. And so what we really felt with Hell Let Loose was, well, let's try and introduce as many people to this as possible, because we kind of felt like this is kind of the adult version of a shooter.
Yeah,
It doesn't rely purely on Twitch shooting. It requires quite a bit of thought. Obviously, you can just play it as just a shooter and just run around, trying to fire accurately at people. But there's also many other different things that you can do in the game, that I think for people who have played shooters a lot become more interesting than just shooting at targets, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. So that was kind of the thinking we felt about the consoles, in so much as console players have played a whole ton of DayZ. They play a lot of Hunt Showdown. They play PUBG. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is, it's a brutally forced teamwork game.
yeah,
You can't really play that without communicating, or not successfully. And as you've said, they've all got microphones. Gone are the days where, um, console players don't use microphones. They're sitting 1,000 meters back on the couch, and they're not particularly into it, and they don't care.
yeah,
So what we thought is, well, look, why not see if all these console players who have been playing a whole bunch of hardcore games in other genres might be interested in playing a hardcore game like this, basically. Um, and so far, we think that it could be really, really interesting to see. Exactly as you've said, we may be the only game on there that offers this type of experience, and it could be really good. It could be, they might all look at it and say, "What on earth is this?" But I think quietly, we're hoping that they look at it and they say, "Oh, I've never tried anything like this before. This is kind of giving me something that all these other games are not giving me." And that they might try and stick around, and that we might see, kind of a whole new um, group of Hell Let Loose players kind of come about on console. In terms of sort of sacrifices we've made, we read a lot of the community comments, and every sort of design decision that the community sort of doesn't tend to agree with, they assume that it's because of console. It's actually not the case. I mean, the
Oh
only thing
man.
really the only thing really that we're having to do for console was change a little bit of the UI stuff. That's been a bit of a technical challenge, just because of how complicated sort of the deploy menu and things like that is.
Yeah.
Nothing else really has been a console concession, if you like. The changes that we had to make for console, which again, like I said, is UI stuff, so that you could basically use the main menu with a controller. The only difference within the console version of the game that won't be available on the PC version of the game is that you'll have auto aim on the console in the same way that you have auto aim for every first person shooter on console.
Yeah.
It's set up the same way. And anyone who's played with a controller without auto aim, uh, and I really say you should give that a try, will realize how important it is to
Yeah.
being able to hit anything. Every game people play on console in first person shooter, I mean, really any game they play on console has an element of auto aim to constrain your aim to a target. That's just kind of standard fare. And
Yeah.
just to hammer it home, that is not going to be on PC. That's the big difference.
Okay.
But that's the big and only difference. But yeah, I mean, other than that, we're having to. I would actually say that the PC product will benefit, and we're hoping that people do see this in Update 10, but will benefit from a lot of the optimization we've been doing for the next gen consoles to make sure that we hit kind of 60 frames per second on those. So we've been
That's
able to
nice to hear.
share a lot of the optimizations, yeah, which has been really good. So we're hoping that you'll start to see some of those in Update 10. And yeah, kind of into the future as well. In terms of the other challenges with console, I mean, we just had to scale the team up a lot. We're working with a fantastic other studio called Flix, who are assisting us in taking it to console. That doesn't mean game design. That doesn't mean anything other
It's
than
just
um,
porting.
sorry. Yeah, yeah. I mean, porting is kind of a dirty word. I mean, it's more kind of, I guess, a conversion in so much as um, we've had lots of conversations about, like, for instance, how should the map work on console? Trying to be sensitive to like what we're doing with Hell Let Loose on PC and making sure that we present that um, as closely as humanly possible to console players. But yeah, same thing. 100 players, same maps, same roles, same everything,
Yeah.
same same HUD, same all the rest of it. Yeah.
So, how has the team grown the past few years, and also how has the whole COVID situation impacted development, if at all?
Yeah, so I mean, to start off, COVID hasn't really impacted us at all because we're all sort of distributed, so we didn't really miss a beat, honestly. We just kind of kept on trucking in the same way that we always have, which has been obviously super fortunate. It's been really great, that we haven't had to stress too much about that. In
Yeah.
terms of expanding the team, we've just brought on more production guys to give us a hand, sort of organizing all of our internal team. We've brought on more 3D artists. We've brought on a new effects artist. We're going to be bringing on more level designers. So
The amount of
we're
assets
basically
here in Stalingrad, by the way, new assets to the game is just incredible.
Oh, I'm glad you
Like,
appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a lot of work. It's been a crazy amount of work for the
I
guys, but I think
remember, was it update 7 quarantine?
mm,
Where you guys were like, oh, we got like new buildings, and there's like 3 new building types and something, and that was really awesome. And then seeing this map, it's like, oh my god, like I don't recognize a single asset from the from the other maps, basically.
yeah. Yeah, well, we felt it was really important to make this feel like it was a whole new thing, right? Like
Yeah,
that it had its own distinct character. That you could basically see a screenshot of someone playing the game and be like, "That's Eastern Front."
yeah. Let's go to
I think
this
some
factory here.
sure, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
100%. So that's been our big kind of thing here is that you don't feel like, that you feel like there are different challenges really,
yeah, it feels
and different
completely
visual
different,
styles.
and
Yeah, fantastic.
that's awesome that COVID hasn't really affected the development, because so many other games have been, uh,
Yeah, push back and
God of War pushed back to 2022 is, I always expected that, but
yeah,
it's still sad.
yeah,
Also,
yeah.
okay,
No,
more
definitely.
personal question:
Hmm.
what games do the guys at the studio play apart from Hella Loose, and what is personally your like gaming guilty pleasure? If there's any game you're actually ashamed of playing.
Um, oh, what do we like? You know what though? We've actually been playing quite a bit of Hell Let Loose, which is hard. It's hard to play because it's just like you just see everything that goes wrong.
Yeah,
Players will look past it. Well, sometimes, but we just see every mistake that is there. But we've actually been really having quite a lot of fun with it as a whole team, and obviously we want to make sure the whole team is in it because. We want people to understand the dynamics of the game, what players love about the game, all the rest of it. But we have been playing quite a bit of Hell Let Loose. I know a lot of the team love Hunt Showdown.
nice.
I know that a lot of us have been playing Baldur's Gate 3. Um, what have I played recently? I've been playing a massive mixture of stuff. I've been playing some deck building games,
Oh, cool.
Griftlands and Trials of Fire. Um, I played Disco Elysium recently. I think in so much as guilty pleasure, we don't. I think we don't even feel guilty about the stuff that we play because a lot of us are just trying to see, like, as you know, gaming is such a massive art form now.
Yeah,
We're always just trying to see. Basically, we'll look on Steam, and if there's a game that we're like, how on earth can anyone find this fun? I will basically get it and check it out and see, like, how do people find this game fun. That's always one of the most interesting questions for me. So one of the weirdest games I played recently was a game called Melville Idle, which is just an idle game, which is
yeah,
perfect for when you're working because you just alt tab and it goes in the background basically.
yeah,
But yeah, it's I played some Sekiro recently. Sometimes a single player game is nice to play, obviously, just
yeah,
to unwind and relax.
yeah,
Although
definitely.
Sekiro's not a great game for relaxing.
No, I, yeah, I'm not a big From Software fan. I could not get into Sekiro for some reason. Like the parry window just did not
Mm.
want to work with me, and I don't know. I lost my patience with it. I did enjoy Ghost of Tsushima a whole lot, though.
I'm keen
Um,
to give Ghost of Tsushima a go. I'm really
it
keen to,
is
yeah, keen to
fantastic
grab
game,
it.
and the Legends mode is just insanely good. The
Okay, well, no,
multiplayer
I'm
co-op
definitely
game.
keen. Oh,
Some
I'm definitely
I
keen.
actually made a couple of video like build guides for that, which I highly recommend, because it's a really fun game to get it to be like OP. You start off and it's
Yep.
really hard, and then you get to be like completely decimate enemies that would absolutely destroy you earlier on.
That power curve
It's
sounds really
yeah.
good.
Oh man, the power curve in the Legends mode is just the best. It's incredible.
Ah,
It's a lot of
fantastic.
fun. Yeah. And in
Yeah,
the
no, I
main
will.
game
I'll
as well.
definitely grab it.
In the main game, you go from basically being a sword guy to basically Batman on steroids.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, yeah. I'm really enjoying those kinds of games at the minute. I mean, Cyberpunk. I know Cyberpunk had a lot of kind of technical issues at release, but
Yeah,
it had that power curve was quite fun towards the end, where you could kind of shut down an entire area just with your mind and things like that. So I'm definitely
I
keen to hop into Ghosts.
yeah I dropped off Cyberpunk because the amount of bugs were just like I could not finish quests and stuff like that. Some people
Ah,
got
yeah, fair
better
enough.
experiences and stuff, but I just could
Yeah.
not. Like after failing the same quest like two or three times because like certain events would just like not trigger, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, no, that's fair enough. No, I totally
Um,
appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, no real guilty pleasures per se. Just playing everything
yeah.
is always wonderful. Yeah.
All right. I think like I don't really have any more questions or anything. If there's something that you guys wanna comment on or talk about or show, or I haven't tried the commander abilities yet. Um,
Oh, you should you should check out the Katusha strike.
okay. Okay. Hold on.
Definitely. Shall we?
Uh,
Shall I knock you off and you can come back in?
yeah, I'll redeploy.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we were talking earlier about airheads, and it's. I think a lot of people don't realize how hard balancing the matches is, given how uneven each match is in terms of the players playing and everything like that. Um, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely look, we've realized that Hell Let Loose is a very hard game to make, particularly for your first game. I mean, not that that's
Yeah.
any excuse, but yeah, Hell Let Loose is definitely an extremely difficult game to make with regard to, um, yeah, basically balancing it, making sure that something functions in the way it should, making sure there's no technical issues with it. Just by virtue of the number of players, really, is the main issue. Um, it is definitely the toughest aspect. And then with it as well. Oh,
I'm dropping an airhead so I can spawn there.
oh, nice, nice.
So I can I
I'll,
so we
I'll
can
come on
yeah.
over. I'll come on over.
Um
Yeah, it is. It's definitely, and then what you always find with Hell Let Loose is something that one person absolutely hates, another person, like I said, another person just
yeah.
loves.
Yeah, that
And
must
so
be.
that's
I do
always
not
the thing.
envy having to scroll through the community feedback and like
Mm.
yeah, that must be sounds like a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, it can be quite difficult. I think the main thing we just would like to ask the community is to kind of, we're really keen for kind of constructive feedback or feedback that where players have thought about like the actual final outcome of the game. We're keen to
Yeah,
avoid feedback that is, a tanker wanting to make tanking more powerful.
yeah,
Like for instance, it's totally understand if, uh, jittering in a tank, which we hope we've fixed. Jittering in a tank is extremely annoying and horrible. Definitely something we want to fix.
yeah,
We want to remove the randomness from it. But if it's just like, um, just to make tanking easier or make it more powerful, that's kind of the type of stuff we're keen to avoid. Has your Katusha? Have you got the
I got the yeah. I'm
cool?
gonna
Okay,
throw it right next to us on the north side.
okay. Where's that coming in? Okay, all right. You kind of want to. Okay, so you'll be able to hear it, and then you'll be able to see the trails. Can you hear that?
Not yet.
It's We might
Like
need to
near,
be
yeah. Oh, there
Oh
you
yeah, there we
go.
go. Yeah, we shouldn't walk too much further. We may miss a bit of it though. There we go.
Nice. Oh, wow. That was awesome.
So that clears out a significant area pretty effectively. And then
Yeah.
obviously, the beauty of it is that we've moved these to kind of physical projectiles. So if you do take cover against the reverse side, of a house or a building.
Yeah, it's not as straight from the heavens orbital strike as it is right now with the with stuff like the arty and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly. So no, it's quite a fun one. I had a lot of fun working on it, and it's fun as well to just see it in a match and know, you can also kind of see which way it's coming in, a bit like the bombing run,
Yeah,
which is fun for sort of telegraphing it so that either taking cover, or taking or trying to leave the area as quick as possible. It's quite enjoyable.
yeah.
But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's. I'm excited for launch. I think it's gonna be really awesome, and yeah,
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate your support and your coverage. I mean, I think just the final thing I want to say, and kind of addressing it more to anyone who likes playing Hell Let Loose, is that just because we're leaving early access doesn't mean the game is done. Like we're still in the middle of development. This is still the game has so much more content to come, so many more mechanics to come, so much more polish to come. Leaving early access kind of represents us having reworked some of the fundamentals of the game, so that we then hopefully won't need to rework them again. And by that we mean, some of the sound systems, the animation systems. I think we've all got a pretty good sense of what the meta of Hell Let Loose is. It's spawn
yeah,
points that players place. We've got most of the key areas in, and now it's about polishing, it's about expanding, and it's about sort of continuing to push the game forward and making it as good as we possibly can. So just want to assure everyone in the community, if there's something that you don't like or something that we've said that we want to do but isn't in the game yet, this isn't a finished, this is a finished product in so much as some of the infrastructure and the foundational stuff under the hood. But we certainly have a lot more to do when it comes to maps, balancing maps, adding vehicles, adding commander abilities, adding weapons, adding gadgets, adding a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah,
what's
we're
in
just excited.
store? What's in store for players after the update? After update 9, what can we expect to get for the Q3 and Q4 part of the year?
We're just figuring that out at the moment because obviously console launch is coming, and we're just kind of we're hoping for the best and preparing for the worst at the moment. So we've got basically, like we always do, a giant list of stuff that we will address if anything pops up. So like for all of our releases, we're waiting to see what pops up, what the community talk about the most, what the community want fixed the most. So we'll have a little bit of that. We're also aiming to we'd love to get half tracks in as soon as possible because we think they'll positively affect the meta. We would love to address any sort of balance concerns that pop up, any bugs, crashes, all that sort of thing. We want to finish the base roster of vehicles for the forces, so the stock Sherman and the Panzer IV. We wouldn't mind getting things like the FG-42 in, the trench guns. We will continue like if depending on where optimization gets to, continue optimization. And then we need to bring in more Eastern Front maps, particularly winter maps. And beyond that, next year in the future, we'll look at potentially additional forces, another, maybe perhaps the British force.
Oh, the British would be so
And I
nice.
would encounter, yeah. So, um, what we're doing at the minute is we're just expanding the team, as much as we can, as fast as we can, to basically make sure that we kind of try and maintain a consistently high quality, and keep pushing what we've got currently further. So, we'd like to do some reworks on Purple Heart Lane, on Omaha. We'd like to look at sort of the least played maps at the minute and think about what might be causing them to be the least played. Yeah, I mean the list is sort of endless, but
Yeah.
we're definitely going to be actively supporting Hell Let Loose for years to come.
You mentioned the the um, the balance between the teams, the win rate between Allies and Germans being close to evenly matched. Was
Hmm.
that not the case before Update 9?
Um, it's it's very hard to tell. We've got telemetry under the hood that kind of gives us an idea.
Yeah,
Um, and um, initially, I think the US had an advantage. Um, and I'm trying to remember. Sorry,
it's
it's
okay.
at the start. At the start, the Germans had the advantage. Then the US had the advantage. But it's never been massively wildly different. It's never been
Yeah,
like every the US
yeah,
wins 2 of 3 games. And now if I check, I think it's something like even the Steam achievements, since we've done brought the Steam achievements in, it's like there's um a decimal point difference between the two of them. I think currently favoring the Allies. So we're always going to keep an eye on that and always kind of keep reworking it.
yeah.
But I even have to say it's certainly closer than we thought it would be. It's closer always than we think it would be. You would
Nice.
think that maybe in a game like this, it was just, always one team, always winning.
Yeah,
For instance, in Red Orchestra, there were some ones that always there were some teams that always won on certain maps, but we're fortunate that we're seeing it be relatively even at the minute.
all right.
But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm sure that things we introduce in the future might change that negatively or positively. Yeah, we'll just keep an eye on it.
All right. Okay. I don't want to take any more of your time. I think that was I had a fantastic time
Oh,
um,
awesome, man!
doing
Awesome.
this,
No, my pleasure.
and yeah, I think. Oh man, I can't wait to start making new videos with the whole like Stalingrad and Kursk and the Russians and stuff. I think it's gonna really revitalize the game for a lot of people, myself included, in terms of like I play this game at least 3 4 times a week for several hours,
Hmm.
and it's definitely gonna inject some cool stuff into it.
Yeah, oh, I'm glad, man. I mean, we really, yeah. I mean, I'm aware people play the game for a bit and then they just, you just get tired of playing the same thing over and over again. So we totally understand. I mean, just like we all do. There are games that we enjoy playing a lot, and then we might decide, okay, I'm gonna have a bit of a break from it for a couple of months. But yeah, we're excited, and we're hoping that this update is excites people and brings people back to check out the game again. Would be obviously fantastic.
All right.
But yeah, glad to hear you're liking what you see, dude.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I think Stalingrad looks amazing. Curse